All right, everybody, we are live for the House of Bricks. Also going to be a podcast, but I was reading our guest's bio today, and the only thing I can do is read it because I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss something really important. So, joining us today, Cal Fussman. He's been interviewed on hundreds of the world's most influential people, including Muhammad Ali, Jack Welch, Serena Williams, and many others. As I got into this part, I realized I thought my life was exciting, but it's actually really boring. In fact, probably after this event, I may go wrestle a bear just for fun. But Cal has done swimming with tiger sharks. He's rolled with gorillas in Rwanda. He's searching for gold on the Amazon. He's boxed against world champion Julio Cesar Chavez. So I'd love to welcome you to the House of Bricks, Cal.
Thank you very much. And let's build something good today.
Wow, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it through something that you are a master of, which is storytelling. And what I tell people, especially the entrepreneurs that we work with, and as you know, the House of Bricks really inspires people to use every opportunity as a place to build strength. And we call it living brick by brick. And, it's really how you respond to adversity that's going to shape your life. But I tell everyone that they have a story that they were designed to tell in only a way that they can tell it to impact the right person at the right time. So that's about as good as I can get to tee you up today. But love to hear a little bit more about your story and journey as a storyteller.
Where do you want to start? You want to start in November of 1963?
Well, I wasn't alive, but we could start there.
All right. Thank you for having me. First of all, as you can see, I was just running from one event to the next. So just getting everything straightened out here. To start off, I'll take you back to a Friday afternoon. I'm in second grade, smallest guy in the class. Miss Jaffe goes out of the room, comes back about a minute or two later, and she's a different person. Her face is chalk, and she's talking so calmly, it's almost unnerving. And she tells everybody that President John F. Kennedy has just been shot. So everybody, after a while, runs home, go to the TV. We find out that President Kennedy's been assassinated. And a little while later, the vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, takes the oath of office, comes a new president. Now, that night, my parents don't know how I'm going to sleep because I just turned 7 years old a week before. And I never dealt with death before. So they go over and call me at the kitchen table and say, Cal, we just want you to know, country, this has happened before. So as terrible a tragedy it is, the country knows how to deal with it. And we want you to know you can sleep well tonight because tomorrow morning, you're going to have breakfast just like you did last Saturday and go out and play like you did last Saturday. So everything's going to be fine. Now, to show you how naive I was, Adam, I thought if you had a middle initial, that meant you got to be the president. Because the only people I ever heard of who were presidents had middle initials. Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I'm now wondering, this guy, Lyndon B. Johnson, he knew he was going to be the president. So how's he feeling? Is he happy to be president? Is he sad because it's only because of the assassination? Or, then I thought, maybe he's scared they're going to try and get him too. I couldn't wrap my hands around it, so picked up a pencil, piece of paper, and just started writing. Dear President Johnson, how does it feel? The timing was perfect. I just learned how to address the envelope. I knew where the stamps were. And finished this letter and basically just licked the stamp, put it in the corner, addressed it President Lyndon B. Johnson, the White House, my return address, didn't tell anybody. And the next day when I went out, I dropped it in the mailbox. Well, a month later, I forgot about it. But 6 months later, my mom comes racing into the apartment with an envelope in her hand. And it's from the White House, addressed to me from the president. And we open it up, and it's kind of amazing because he's not addressing me as a second grader. He's addressing me with dignity. He's basically, and the way we knew this, the second sentence started something like, in answer to your query. And I had no idea what a query was, but I knew that our apartment was filled up with people. They wanted to hold on to the envelope, and the principal from the school was calling. He wanted me to bring it in. And so I learned in that moment that a great question could get you to the most powerful person on earth. And that story shaped the rest of my life.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. And you remember we got connected on David Meltzer's office hours, right? And you asked me what I was thinking when I was 7 years old. And I shared a story with you when I was 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. They all kind of blend together. But I wanted a microphone. And my parents were always like, hey, you got to earn what you get. And so my mom said, well, if you want a microphone, you got to do 500 sit-ups in order to get it. And never thought I would be on a stage, never wanted my name in lights, although my name is now in lights behind me. But part of what I was struggling with, I guess, for the last couple of years is I didn't feel like I had a story to tell. There's people like you that have way more interesting stories. But my wife, I'm been married 20 years. I've learned that she's always right. She's just 5 years ahead. So being a good husband, I've shortened it now to about a year. I'm about a year behind. But she looked me in the eyes and said, Adam, your story's not about you. It's how you can inspire other people through telling your story. And you've interviewed, obviously, some of the most influential people in the world. Is there a common thread that you've seen in these people, certain characteristics?
Yes. All of them make profound connections. And there's not one of them that didn't know how to connect either with a lot of people or with a certain area of expertise. But connection was key, and it enabled them to go wherever they went and be remembered by so many people. You mentioned Muhammad Ali. He's like a classic example. Everybody in the world knew he was. And if people approached him, he literally tried to connect with everybody. There's a story of him going through an airport, and he was with a reporter, and they were kind of late for a plane. This was before the days of the security we have now. And a woman saw him, and an older woman, and just kind of stopped him. And the reporter turned around and said, "Lee, what are you doing? We're going to miss the flight." And Ali turned to him and said, like, that may be the only time that woman's ever going to get a chance to say hello to me or shake my hand. And so I'm going to make sure it happens. And they may have missed the flight, but his point was he was very focused on the way people reacted to him. Maybe the same way that Jeff Bezos was focused on the way, people reacted to an iPhone. It's that kind of connection.
Yeah, and it really is, the most important capital, right, is relationship capital. Show me your 5 friends, I'll show you who you are. Your network is your net worth, all those common things. One thing that I've struggled with my limited success in life is just people being unauthentic with their desires to connect. So like how do people build relationship capital but still remain authentic?
Can you tell when somebody is being inauthentic when they approach you?
Now I can after after 15 years of practice. It doesn't take long.
Well, was there a marker where you could start to tell?
Honestly, it's intuition. You develop over time.
So there was no like exact moment where you could look up and say, you know what, that person's kind of full of it.
Nothing I can identify. Like I said, I've got those street smarts.
Okay. Like for me, I remember going to college and most everybody was like who they were. And then you had people who would like maybe even be trying to sell something at a young age. And they hadn't developed a layer of authenticity with the salesmanship. And so they might be walking over to everybody they meet, shaking hands the same way, introducing themselves the same way. And everybody can just see that this is how this person rolls. And you get to a point where people are just acting natural and making you feel comfortable, and you just know it. Maybe like what you're just describing, after a certain time, you figured it out.
Yeah, I think it's a learned skill set. And just to talk to you a little bit about the House of Bricks platform, right? It's a place where we have people actually come and share their story. I'm sure you've learned interviewing these influential people. No one has a straight rise to the top, and it's how they respond to adversity that they're able to make progress, turning obstacles into stepping stones. A majority of our listeners are entrepreneurs and founders of businesses. How would you relate storytelling to being an entrepreneur?
Oh man. If you can't tell your story as an entrepreneur, how are you going to sell your product? It's almost impossible. You can't have one without the other. Or if you are somebody who can figure out how to make the product but can't sell it, you need somebody to tell the story about it. Because I can't see how you could possibly sell something if you can't tell the right story about it, if you can't tell what it authentically does for you.
Yeah, and it's amazing. There's so many great technologies out there, so many different platforms and products that never make it. They don't succeed. 9 out of 10 startups fail. And what you said was very similar to what David said on our live event yesterday. Like if you can't communicate the quantitative value of what it is, the problem that you're solving, and what the outcome is going to be, you might as well just pack it up because you got to be able to tell the story. And just from your experience in telling stories, like where does someone start in that process to develop those skills?
Okay, all good storytelling, and look, this really is measured up against what an entrepreneur is dealing with, because an entrepreneur is solving a problem, which means that there's a vulnerability. And all great stories, all good stories, they start with vulnerability. There is a vulnerable character, and the hero's journey that's been identified over the years, and it's been employed back to ancient Athens, starts with that vulnerable character, and then that vulnerable character gets you to be in their shoes because you know their vulnerability and you see that they have an intention to surmount it. So those are the first two steps of the hero's journey. The third step, conflict inevitably arises. And in business, you know that conflict is going to arise. So everything is perfectly aligned there when it comes to a personal story. And then a mentor appears. Somebody will show up that will offer a suggestion, an idea that will help the vulnerable character get past the obstacle to make a transformation. So that's step 4 is the mentor. Step 5 quite often is the conflicts are not done. The conflicts keep coming. It's sort of like a Godzilla movie, always figures a way to come back. And the last step is a step of transformation. So if you just follow those 6 steps, you can tell your personal story. But it kind of gets interesting when it moves over to business because, and this is where I've seen a lot of people make mistakes. They think that the business they started makes them the hero. And it doesn't work that way. In a business story, it's the customer who's the hero. The customer is the vulnerable character. And the customer has an intention to surmount the vulnerability. The customer is being impacted by conflicts. And then the business becomes the mentor. That product helps the customer get past the difficulties. Now, there may be some additional conflict, but ultimately at the end, because of the mentor, because of the business, because of the product, the character, the client is able to make a successful transformation. And that is the hero's journey from a business perspective.
If I could drop this mic, I would, and just walk out and let you finish the show. I mean, that's literally what we're teaching people.
Wow.
And the various entrepreneurs. I can't emphasize it enough. And what you just said is the power of mentorship. It's a universal truth. When someone overcomes a situation and they're in a place where you want to go, they have the power to bring you to where they are. And one piece I wanted to ask you about, and those 6 components were spot on, is over your travels and influencing, speaking with these influential people, how important is a community aspect?
Whew. Well, I mean, it's if you got a business, having a community, word of mouth, people passing on the story of how they reacted with you, your company, the product, that's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, and it's running alongside and climbing with someone that's kind of experiencing the same thing. So I really look at 3 types of relationships for people to 10x their life. They all want to do it through gimmicks and sales and marketing, but it's really having someone mentor you, have a peer that you're running with. And then where people miss out is mentoring other people. It actually makes you a better person, even if you haven't climbed Mount Everest or swam with tiger sharks. Like, everyone has something that they could teach someone that is where they want to be. And again, it's telling your story. It creates inspiration, transformation, and motivation that will help them get to where you are. And we're just going to go off script here. I didn't even have one anyway. But what do you want to talk about, Cal? I know you've always got something crazy you want to pull out of your hat there.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I'll tell you something that happened to me just the other day. I was a technophobe in like 20 years back, I just didn't really grasp the internet when everybody jumped into it. And it kind of held me back. And I just made it a character trait that I was an old school guy. But when artificial intelligence appeared, I just said, this is not going to happen to me again. Because I'm recognizing it as maybe the biggest thing that's ever happened to humanity. And I got wind of this app called Suno, Suno.
Okay.
And it allows you to make music. Now, when I say make music, you can hear my voice. I ain't Pavarotti. I don't play the piano. I don't play the guitar. I love music. I've interviewed many of the musical greats. Quincy Jones, I think he's back there. You see Muhammad Ali. And I got sent this app, and you can make a song just by putting in a prompt in like less than 30 seconds. And it comes out with like a voice that you might hear on a radio. And I bring this up because it's a huge issue for a lot of creative people. And a lot of people feel challenged by it. They're scared of it. And I've already like written, and then you can go and write your own lyrics and it'll make your own songs. And I actually put a song out on my podcast to just show how easy it is to do this. And the reason I bring it up is because I'm telling people, you've got to stay current with AI, because if you're not using it as a tool, you're not going to be able to compete. And if you use it as a tool, you're going to put yourself in a completely different space. And so what I've come to conclude is, man, all this AI is going to supplant all that we know. We're just not going to be as quick. But there's one thing that artificial intelligence will never be as good as a human, and that is making authentic human connections.
I agree.
And that is what we got to double down on while we use AI as the tool. And then look, it goes back to like your first question about what was the thread that was holding all these icons that I've interviewed and shaped the last 75 years of world history. They made connections. And so we don't want to feel isolated over time, especially in the age of remote work. Comes back to what you're talking about with communities and staying attached, because that is going to be one of the most, if not the most important thing that we got. Everything else AI is going to be able to do better.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just going to make our time in person more valuable. Like even now, right? We're over StreamYard. It would be totally different if, I was sitting in your office. It's just a different energy. And I don't think, well, I know it'll never be recreated, that same type of experience. And thank you for sharing that. So as a master interviewer and storyteller, do you have any questions for me?
Let's see. What area of AI would you like to jump into? There's AI now that allows you to make your own films. You just prompt the machine and films come out of it. Do you have areas where you would like to use tools, or are you pretty well settled in the house of bricks where you live?
Yeah, we we use AI as much as it's efficient for us, but sometimes it's a double-edged sword because you're putting information in, you're getting it back out. It's not what you want. You put it back in, get it back out. It would have been easier to just write it. And so what we were talking about earlier is the value of authenticity. So no matter how many cycles you go through Chat GPT, it's just different. And a lot of times I tell people like to pursue not what is easy, but what is fulfilling. And fulfillment comes from telling the truth. And when you tell the truth, it creates an adventure. And when people don't, and they seek kind of their own agenda, like how many times have you been wrong in what you actually wanted? So if you approach a relationship to try to get what you want out of it versus telling the truth, like telling the truth is an adventure. It creates, and it may be bad for a while, but who knows what door may close to lead to another one. So maintaining that authenticity, seeking what is fulfilling, not what is easy. You tell the truth, it takes you on an adventure.
I'm with you 1,000,000%. And I think that one thing that people can do is to try to storytell and ask questions to one another, people that they're working with that they may not know very well, in order to better connect so they can better collaborate better. Because, and you tell me, I'm sure you talk to many people who are working remotely, and it is not the same thing. You just referenced it in about this conversation. If people can tell each other their stories, ask each other their questions, reveal the vulnerabilities, show how they personally like to work and get the most out of themselves. It's almost like being athletes on a sports team. You're able to understand how the other person's thinking, how they're moving, and it really does allow people to collaborate better, I think.
Yeah, no, 100%. And what I was just thinking about as you were finishing that is something you mentioned earlier, probably inadvertently, or didn't know how it ties in to what we teach here at the House of Bricks. But a lot of entrepreneurs are focused on their minimum viable product. Like, oh, I've got to build something and get to market. And we actually flip the script and say, you need to find a minimum viable customer, like someone who is going to tell you what problems you can help them solve, rather than rushing an MVP to market. It's probably trash anyway, or by the time you get it to market, it's irrelevant. Find a customer, hear their story, right, of what you can solve for them. You meet the need. And like you said, it's the hero's journey of meeting them where they are and taking them to where they want to go. And for the entrepreneurs out there listening, the power of storytelling when you're starting a business and recruiting a team. What is your story? What is your vision? If you're raising capital, you have to be able to tell what the story of your business is. Investors see 1,000 presentations a year, so they don't really care about how pretty your PowerPoint is, or the cash component. Obviously, they're interested in that, but what is the story your business is going to tell? Is really what they're after, and the problem that you're going to help your customers solve. So this has been really powerful, Cal. Thanks for joining us today on the House of Bricks Live. Any closing thoughts? I know you got something you want to drop for us.
Well, I just want to thank you, Adam. I think what you just said is the bullseye. Like, if you know who the customer is, and you can then connect with that person well before they're the customer, and ask the questions that pull out their hero's journey, then you're in the place to create what will make the hero's journey work. And that's very different from everything that I learned growing up about being a writer, because many times when you're writing, you're you're thinking of it, oh, this is my story. But what you're recommending is think of what you're doing as your customer story. And if you will do that, then you're going to make your customers happy. And once the customer is happy, you're going to be happy.
Absolutely. All right. Well, as we wrap up, I want to thank everyone for joining. I still see people on here commenting. Cal, thank you so much for your time. I love this connection. I do want to meet you in person at some point because I know we'll have a great conversation and ask some great questions of each other and continue to inspire people through storytelling.
You know what? I just got the comments up, and there's one here. Suno AI is crazy. I'm telling you, as Marvin
Schneider.
Yeah, you're right. You're right on it. And I would just recommend people go to this just to understand, like, almost all of AI and how fast it's moving. And this is artistic in a way that ChatGPT really isn't. And it's going to show you a different look. And look, I am at the same time telling everybody to do this. I'm also at the same time warning people, we don't want to get isolated in a room writing 30 songs and not listening to real artists. But it's so clear to me that this next step, we all got to jump on it and then convert it into exactly what you're talking about, Adam, because it can help.
Well, now you have me inspired to write a House of Bricks rap song. So I think
will you come on my podcast and we'll talk about the song you wrote?
For sure. That's a takeaway for me. So now I've got more homework to do. And I am here in Detroit, one of the greatest rappers ever. I'm going to go with Eminem. So listen, Cal, thanks for joining today. I appreciate it. And I know you get asked to do a lot of things, but it really means a lot to us, our audience, our listeners, the entrepreneurs out there that we're trying to tell their story, but they really need to hear their customer story and help them achieve where they want to go, and the rest will take care of itself. So thanks again for joining the House of Bricks Live, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Adam, and thank everybody who is listening, because I'm looking at all these comments now. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.